It was like an ominous war scene. It was dust. It was complete silence. You know, I kind of like looked over to the left, and I see it was Phil. Phil had like thrown his bike off the road and was just out on a flat out sprint to Tom. And beyond Phil was this oryx laying there dead in the fucking road.
Tom's bike just went left and right and left, and then bang!
The realization that this was serious then started to kind of dawn on us.
That moment of kind of coming around the corner and seeing bikes on the floor, animals on the floor, that was the moment I struggled with the most.
No one ever talks about the easy days on a bike. You don't sit around a campfire talking about, oh man, we just had such an easy ride, we were just cruising and it was easy. Like, no, the stories come out when it's raining, it's muddy, it's sandy, it's hard. Things will go wrong. Balancing the thrill of adventure with making sure everyone's safe it's probably one of the most difficult things about these trips.
I am one of 5 owners of Baffle House, which we're sat in today. It stemmed from a little Instagram page and 2 mates from uni trying to get free jackets sent to us by getting a few thousand followers on Instagram. Like most good things, happened entirely by accident. I have fond memories of going to motorbike shows with my father. There was one rule that my mum made for me growing up, and that was no motorcycles and no tattoos. But yeah, I never fully explored it until a conversation I had with Saltz. We were stood in the conservatory of the house that we were in a house share at the time. He'd just watched Into the Unknown, which was the documentary with David Beckham. He rode a custom Triumph Bonaville. Anyway, long story short, he was like, Jesus, he's cool, isn't he? I think I'm going to do my CBT motorbike test. Yeah, I think because the interest was always there, I was never going to sit back and watch him learn how to ride a motorbike and me just watch it. So yeah, very much on the sly. I also did my CBT, and very much on the sly, my dad helped me buy my first 125.
When I first got into motorbikes, I did it for all the wrong reasons. I just wanted to look cool. I wanted to look like David Beckham on a custom Triumph. Deep-rooted somewhere, I just had this fascination for CB 1050s. This summer, gave it to the legend that is Sid Motorcycles, Sam's dad, and the genius went to work, all just to look cool. Now it's winter, all we get to do is sit next to each other, tell stories, get to know one another. So big summer for Charlie next year, and I hope she's ready.
So a very long time ago, I used to work in PC World in Cardiff. Me and a couple of my friends who worked there at the time, one day, drunk, after a paintball game, decided we were going to learn to ride motorbikes. Because this can never be proved, right? So this is fine. Within a couple of days, we were literally out looking for the longest, straightest roads we could find and just pinning the throttles wide open. No experience, just 180. The needle on the bike flapping constantly at the red line. And literally hide underneath the visor and just go like that until the bike ran out of power. That was interesting. I crashed that first bike, funnily enough.
What was it?
A ZZR 600.
I live an hour away from the Baffle House, but I go to the Baffle House as much as possible. And it's a location to go and talk and catch up. The Rag and Bone Cafe is closer, but it does the same thing. If we go out for a ride on the bikes, or if we go for a drive in the cars, or we go to the gym, whatever we do, coming here to a central place that feels comfortable, great coffee, feels comfortable, and you feel at home, then you can talk. And men don't talk these days, or we do talk more than we did. But this kind of safe environment brings that out in us. So yeah, it's vital to me.
I'm the founder, one of the founders, and a director of Bike Park Wales. I would always explain to someone it's like a ski resort for bikes. So we have green runs, which are beginner runs, right up to black runs. And there's a real mix. You know, you could come here as a first timer, never rode a bike before, and have a really good experience. And likewise, we'll get like professional racers coming here and training and having fun. My first ever motorbike experience was, I think, I was pretty young. I was probably about 11. I think a friend had a KX80 small wheel, and yeah, we just go off in a field and rip around a field, which was brilliant. And I think, you know, I lived in a town, he lived in the country. It was just not something that was like in my world at that point, other than playing on his bike.
My grandfather had a old Honda 90 Trail. Yeah, I sort of started off driving maybe a small ride-on mower for cutting around some of his. He used to grow macadamia nuts, so cutting around the macadamia nut trees, and then eventually was allowed onto the Trail 90. I wasn't showing how to change gear, so I would go everywhere in first gear, very high revs. In 2001, we moved back from Dorset to Cardiff, and I'd had enough of working for other people and working at their standard. I felt like we should be working at a higher standard. So I thought I'll just do a few jobs for myself. Yeah. So bought an old chainsaw, an old pickup truck, and started, and it kind of grew.
We are in Airhead Coffee Roasters, which is very much in its infancy. Every day is sort of like something new that we haven't done before, and the day after we don't know what's coming. We've got this really cool little venue here. We've got like an industrial unit, which we've had for probably about a year now, since the idea came about to start Airhead. And it's kind of growing into a social space, I'd say, really. You know, we're learning how to roast coffee, and being social and bringing other motorcycle and coffee related things. I was working offshore with an older Australian fella, and all he did all day was talk about motorbikes, and he just was talked about it so much that I had to do it. We sat all day looking through magazines, and I was like, right, I'm doing it. So yeah, so I went out and did my bike test and got myself a little Kawasaki 650.
We're in the Orchard Coffee & Co, St George. A beautiful old restored church building with a touch of, I don't know, retroness, vintage. Something we work our asses off every day just to be here. We love it. It's not like work to me anymore. We've been around 5 years now. So I started riding about a year and a half ago. Really, Phil showed me a picture of like an old cafe race, and I was like, oh yeah, I want one of those. Sort of persuaded me, pushed me. We started becoming closer friends. And then eventually I took the plunge, found a 125 little bullet. Failed my CBT the first time. Went for it, passed again, and then just rode pretty much all summer on the 125.
I've been riding motorcycles, I think properly since 2018. My family were always into motorcycling. My dad, my uncles, but they were into their sports bikes. I was, I think, 16 when my dad taught me to ride a motorcycle, and the first bike he put me on in a car park was a Hayabusa, one of these 1300cc, I think at the time world's fastest production bike, and I subsequently dropped it within 2 minutes. So I was scarred and never again touched a motorcycle until I moved to London. I got into motorcycling again because of a woman. So she was the one that got me into adventure riding specifically. I'd always fought these sports bikes, but as you can see, I've got the Scrambler there. It was this intention to have these big bikes off-road.
We all have a mutual friend called Ollie.
Ollie, if you've not met him, he's larger than life character and often has massive ideas. And I think sometimes in a group of friends, you need someone to be the instigator of these weird and wonderful things. I had been to Baffle House a few times and was conversing with Ollie on Instagram about his Scram Africa trip on this bike, and made a silly comment like, oh yeah, about his bike being brilliant. And he just said, make me an offer. So like a Wally, and I made him a stupid offer. It was a stupid offer. And went and bought it, but obviously met him that day and sort of thing. He's a very likeable bloke, isn't he? And so I suppose that was the moment that led to being invited on the trip to go to Namibia, because I got a phone call from him asking if I'd be interested in going.
The opportunity to take part in this Namibian adventure came about because I retired after playing 10 years of professional cricket. So yeah, I was never going on this trip. That was never the plan. And it just so happened that with timing of how the year developed, that I could attend, I could take part. And yeah, I had no idea what I put myself in for.
When Ollie decides something's happening, it's happening, right? So Ollie rang me in the car with my wife and the kids in the car. What do you reckon? Like, should we do Namibia next year? I said, Kelly's in the car with me. He went, hi, Cal, how's it going? Can Andrew come to Namibia? She went, yeah, why not? Sounds like the trip of a lifetime. I'm like, I'm in!
Are we in?
Yeah.
Take two.
Take two. In terms of like what influenced me to guide tours, I think that comes from my military experience. I've tried to figure out like what it is about these adventures that I love and what I offer to other people and why I do it. When I was in the military, I was a specialist, so E4. I didn't have people who were under me. I wasn't a team leader. I wasn't a leader of anybody. And I always felt like I wanted to be a leader in the military, but I also didn't want to stick around in the military any longer than I had to. So I think there was a part of me that really wanted to lead people. I felt like I could be a good leader, and that I wanted to take people to places and let them feel safe. So I think with Bonafide, like that's kind of been my military, what I missed maybe in the military was that I get to lead people on adventures and take them to amazing places and make sure that they're well taken care of. You know, like I really try to look after them as much as possible, even when they don't think I'm thinking of them. Like I'm always, I'm probably a bit too mindful of everyone. But you know, I also want to make sure everyone gets home safe at the end of the day. Yeah. Me creating routes, it took me years to create routes. I think I had a big fear of like just going down a road or looking on Google Maps and being like, oh, that looks like a cool road. And I think that came from maybe a lack of confidence that I had in my riding skills. So eventually I, would go onto Google Maps and I would, take off the highway options. And then eventually I started to have a lot of fun with it. So now I feel really confident in my map skills to just find the most like epic places, and you kind of let your curiosity run wild of like, you look on a map and you see the topography, and there's a lot of places that I want to go. Like for me, I much prefer the places that are more remote, and I want to share those with other people. So the routes that I create or the routes that I take other people on is really routes that I enjoy, and I feel like I want to share my interest with other people because I feel like it's quite cool, or it's quite nice. Like I don't want to go to popular places. Every once in a while we'll go to like a popular place, but for me it's about getting remote as possible and seeing places that you may never see on a map or Google, and really just going out and exploring as far as you can.
sickness was forever. I remember snuff videos.
I think I probably had a preconceived idea of what Namibia would be like, and our first taste of it was in Windhoek, in a capital city, I guess, and it probably felt a lot more westernized than I was probably expecting. Like the first, breakfast we had, we rode to like quite an upmarket cafe where we had flat whites with latte art, and it was like, I probably wasn't necessarily expecting that side of things.
I think from day 1 to 10 was thrilling. I think there wasn't many days on the bike that was easy or chilled. Even when we had some long straights on tar, they were pretty quick.
The trip to Namibia was probably the single most influential experience I've had in the last 20 years, if not more, other than meeting my wife, obviously, and having my daughter.
It was at the end of the first day, we rode to Spitzkopf, and as we dropped into there, all of a sudden I was like, it just opened up, the road dropped away, and it opened up, and you got these huge granite boulders, like, and mountains, almost granite mountains, and I was like, this is what I'm here for, like, this is what I've come to see.
See, I spent my teens in rage.
That was something else riding towards that.
Silence, and I armed myself with a grin.
As you're going along, you can see in the horizon this mountain just suddenly growing, like at quite fast pace.
Boys, rock the room, talking lines, drenched in cheap drink and slide bags. A mirrored picture of my old man. Oh God, the kid's a damn hard. Can't he chana, but he looks sad. God, the kid looks so sad.
For me, that was quite a cool moment. We're just all just sitting there chilled, enjoying the moment, enjoying the sunset, and then struggling to get back down the hill afterwards.
looks like a Jaguar. It's got leather seats. It's got a CD player. But I don't wanna talk about it anymore. I think we're gonna make it. I think we're gonna save it, yeah. So don't you try and fake it anymore, anymore. We'll start over again, grow ourselves new skin, get a house in Devon, drink cider from a lemon. But I don't wanna talk about it anymore. I think we're gonna make it. I think we're gonna save it, yeah. So don't you try and fake it anymore, anymore.
We were all full. We'd had a nice fish, you know, like we had some sort of fish meal. I think king clip, that's it. Werner wouldn't shut up about this king clip, and so we all had it. It was delicious. We'd already sort of gotten to know each other a bit. We had sort of left and we got to this the shipwreck, and we had, I just remember Tom going out and getting his drone, because the shipwreck was, quite incredible, like seeing something as derelict and large and humongous in what was quite a rough sea. And again, different from all the landscapes we'd had actually seen at that stage, and it got cold as well. Like that was also what characterized it. It gets cold, it's not just hot all the time. You got the weather changes. You had, like the camera, come out, getting, this epic shot. You then had those vendors come out all of a sudden selling all these things, and then of course they managed to corner, it was a Dave or someone, and pressurized him into and then like Werner having to shoot him away, like there was that, again, the whole spectrum of friendly to pushy vendors there. There was the challenge of the motorcycle, because there was, we'd got the sand. We hadn't actually, I don't think at that point, well, all I know is that this was the kind of sand you really didn't want to ride, because it was just full of ruts, all these ruts from trucks going through, all these divots, and but very soft in parts.
So day 3 particularly stands out as the most epic day on a motorbike and the worst day I've experienced on the motorbike all in one. We woke up to some really good breakfast and some good banter, and it was really exciting for the day. There was a rumour that there was some sand.
So then we headed off to actually try and experience riding some sand, and Joe, our leader, or the general, as we all came to call him, he had a spot in mind which was like just a few K out of the town.
We'd spend a day in some sand dunes, and realised that riding in sand it's like riding on ice.
We had a really nice morning. It was really fun. We were in the dunes where we shouldn't have been. We didn't have a permit?
Werner had warned me, I think the night before, that the sand training session was a surprise. That we would come around the corner and all of a sudden we'd all just come to a standstill because we'd been in sand, because we were in deepening sand. However, it still surprised me. I knew we were going to the dunes. I knew it was coming, that we were going to come around a corner, and then all of a sudden we're stuck in sand on a bike. I didn't come off. A few people came off, but I just kind of got stuck. We all turn our bikes off. Joe tells us that this is our sand training session. And yeah, we didn't really think much about it. We just went about trying to ride in the sand or trying to avoid riding in the sand. A few of the boys were sort of taking off and going around and going over a dune and falling over, and I'm sort of sitting there thinking, I suppose I've got to give this a go, haven't I? And so I started and I stalled and I slipped the clutch. So I'm off and I'm on and I'm riding on the sand, and it all seemed okay. And when I stop, everyone's cheering like I'd done something incredible. And thus came out the nickname Sandman.
Myself and Tom found ourselves playing in the sand dunes for quite a while early on in the trip. With Tom turned to me at one point and shouted, "I don't know what I'm doing," to which I enjoyed, and I didn't either, but I like the fact that he admitted it first.
And I looked at them going, what the fuck have I got myself into? Because first of all, I didn't know I need to start sand in second gear, and no one told me that until I got there. So I was like, and that was crazy, but you, as I said, just keep going, and then I just keep going, and you're turning, you're like, I'm just gonna crash.
Riding in deep sand on the dunes for a very, very first time, and everybody thinking, oh my God, this is insane.
The scenery was insane. The sand dunes were just epic, but riding on them was hilarious because it was like it was a war zone. There were bikes everywhere, bodies everywhere, people trying to dig people out. Those that managed to get momentum on the bike, trying to keep that momentum on the bike, but heading for someone that was fallen off. It was chaos, but hilarious chaos.
So we had another couple of goes, and then this tourist guide turned up and told us we shouldn't be doing what we're doing and where we are. And so we left abruptly, and we talked about it more down the road, but none of us were overly pleased with having upset someone and possibly broken the law, which we didn't really think was a big issue at that time.
We went to this spot which we all named Mars, and that's one of, definitely one of the most epic places I've ever ridden a motorbike. And then we all parked up just on the top of this outcrop of rock, overlooking these huge sort of basins of really, really white sand. And then you had these black outcrops of rock all around, like linking all these basins. I was just like, wow, this place is phenomenal. So, but at the same time, all I'm thinking is, I want to ride it now. I was like, sort of looking at the group and seeing how everyone was sort of acting, and I was like, I need to get on this as quick as I can.
Joe, our leader, had coined it as Mars, so it was on the itinerary as Mars. Only actually going to that landscape and seeing it did I really get why he called it Mars, and it did feel like it was not even on this planet. It was quite a dangerous canyon bit to get down to, and to start off with it was just Toby and Rowan, which were kind of brave enough to go down. But yeah, just seeing them come back and their pure elation of how cool it was to ride at the bottom in this completely flat sand open space. I was like, I think it's just about worth the risk. It's one of those battles I was having in my head. It's like, okay, we're on day 3 or 4 here. We've got such a long trip ahead of us. All it will take is just bending the handlebars or I don't know, just twisting something and making the rest of the trip. But yeah, in terms of risk and reward, so worth it. Just really, really cool experience, once in a lifetime for sure.
A basin that was just flat full of sand, and no rocks down there as well. But the only way to get down to the basin was this sort of narrow, windy, really heavily sandy but soft sand trail going down that definitely put off everyone at the beginning until we had Rowan and Toby with their incredible skills, just, and confidence as well, just go down there. Sort of inspired me. I'm like, well, I'm actually experienced in this, may not be as good, but I'm experienced, so also went down there.
When we got to this, it was a cross between Mars and a massive sand pit. It was kind of like the moon. We came over this brow and then just saw the flattest section of sand that went for probably the best part of a mile, encased in kind of rocks and kind of like a moon type scenery. I remember parking the bike up and everyone, it was quite challenging to get there, and everyone kind of chattering around and some nervousness and apprehension. But I remember looking to my right and Rowan still had his goggles on and his eyes were like saucers, like so wide. Even though he had his helmet on, I could tell he was just smiling, and we were both like, this is gonna be insane. So we made our way to the campsite. We came up through some hills. The scenery was epic. We stopped for some a picture against the sign. I had a photo. This isn't going to get any better.
We all stopped and it was like, we're there. We're almost done. This day's been the best day ever, and we're nearly there. Everybody on a real high.
And then like the rest of the day was like really great. We went through probably one of my favorite days of riding through Namibia. It's just this area from Swakopmund to Solitaire, and it's phenomenal. And we were heading out on this road, and the road conditions had kind of changed. They got much better, and it was much smoother. And I think after riding through so much corrugation, to have like a nice road condition, like you tend to kind of pick up the throttle a little bit more.
And then we got back on the road and we were so comfy, I remember we had this group at the front, and Joe was leading, and I remember the bullet just shot past everybody and was really in his flow. And then Tom as well seemed to hit his stride really well, and I thought, I'm sticking with him, and I felt so comfortable sticking with him. And I think it was brilliant that the sun was just starting to come down. We weren't far from Solitaire. It was like, okay, let's just get this day banged out. I was laughing in my helmet at one point when I was just like this with Tom. It was amazing. And I'm really happy.
And so there was myself and 3 other guys who were picking up the pace. And we were at a decent pace for a while. We were about 9 Ks from our accommodation when things just went pear-shaped. Like I felt something inside of me. I'm very good with my intuition. I felt like something wasn't right and that maybe we should slow down. And just as that feeling arose, I looked up ahead of me and I see off to my left, there's 2 oryx kind of running in front of us in parallel. And we were riding up, and I was like, okay, I see these over here. I think they're gonna just stay straight. They're not gonna come over this way. So I think I just backed off the throttle a little bit. When you see wild animals, I think some people's natural tendency is to react quickly, and that's when things can go really wrong. So I tend to try not to make like a sudden movement So I think I backed off the throttle, and just as the Oryx had gotten out of, or was just about to get out of my peripheral vision, I saw him turn right.
Going into solitaire, and we're like neck and neck, and then I saw the Oryxes on the side, and I'm like, oh goodness, they didn't. And then Joe was pointing, and I was like, oh my goodness. I just sped up thinking what happened, and then he looked in his mirror, and we both turned around.
He did it was a 90-degree turn, and he had been flat out, and he just turned on a dime, and he came in, and he had ducked in behind me. There was a guy off to my left, and he just missed that guy. And then I looked in my rear view to the right-hand side, and Tom was behind me. And I just remember seeing, it was like this big dust cloud, and Tom was like quite hazy, and all of a sudden I see the Oryx hit Tom and this impact of like dust. And I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. And I just see this fishtail. And I think Tom kind of fishtailed probably 6 or 7 different times. And I'm like, come on, stay on.
I remember us, like I said, we were doing, I think it's quite strange because I remember looking at my Speedo just before, which is why the speed always sticks in my mind. And it was reading like 128 kilometers per hour. And I was just thinking to myself, keep it upright, trying to dab that rear brake. Kept a bit of speed on it. It was wobbling, but I was doing okay. And then all of a sudden just saw Tom just like this. And I don't know how it happened, but it seems like one of the Oryx just kind of almost stopped. And Tom's bike just went left and right and left, and then bang! And
Tom just flopped over on the side, and I just remember, fuck! Like that shit was real. Like that was a real fucking moment. And I just slammed on the brakes, turned around, and it was like this, it was like an ominous war scene. It was dust, it was complete silence. I kind of like looked over to the left, and I see, it was Phil. Phil had like thrown his bike off the road and was just out on a flat out sprint to Tom. And beyond Phil was this Oryx laying there dead in the fucking road.
As you're rolling up, you're trying to figure out what's going on, but straight away people stood around and I'm thinking, this doesn't look great, that something's not right for sure. And I rolled up closer, and then I could see like this Oryx was clearly, it was gone, it was deceased, and just from the hit. And then I saw Joel. I was like, what's happened? And he said, Tom hit the antelope. I was like, is he okay? He's like, he's not great. He's in a lot of pain.
And then Tom's over here on the right-hand side, and I was just like, holy shit, like this is real. And, I didn't know what was up with Tom. I didn't know if he was alive. I didn't know the severity of his injuries.
I went past at that point, but towards the side of the road. And honestly, I can just visualize Tom's bike just doing cartwheels past me, da-dum, da-dum, like that. Not this close, but the other side of the road, boom, boom, boom. So I went to the side of the road and just basically laid the bike down, turned around, and there was Tom on the side of the road, just like they're overturning.
The realization that this was serious then started to kind of dawn on us. Rowan and Phil were attending to Tom with Joe there as well. We were still at that point of thinking, he'll dust himself off, he's probably got some real grazes, maybe he's got a little bit of a fracture somewhere or something, but he'll be good to go. He'll be jumping in the truck and we'll be taking the mick out of him while we're supping on some cold beers. It was only at the point that Rowan started to walk over, he came over and was flustered, and he said, this is bad. He's in a bad way. I think there's some chest injuries. I think there's some leg injuries, some hip. Basically, it would have been quicker for him to state what he doesn't think was injured. Just the persona of Rowan, I thought this is serious.
And then after about 20 to 30 minutes, I think Tom got worse. It was like, I think the adrenaline had probably worn off. He was getting more vocal. There was more pain that was arising. And at that time, a vehicle pulls up, and of course, it's a fucking doctor. And unfortunately, the lady was Italian. She didn't speak great English, but she was able to kind of help us with some basic vital signs that maybe we weren't picking up on, and she could kind of scan Tom a bit to give us more information that we could later share to medical professionals. That's what we like to see.
I think it was the chap that owned the lodge, came over and said, guys, you need to kind of have a look at this. And then we found out that there was a WhatsApp group full of local rangers and tall people who were all a bit upset with us because we'd gone somewhere that it turns out we shouldn't have gone, and we'd ridden motorbikes on sand dunes that were pristine, and we'd made a genuine mistake. Those people were very upset with us.
And they have this WhatsApp group with all the Namibia tour guides, these WhatsApp, and they posted, hey, look, here are some, people not respecting the rules, and you can imagine in these social media groups, it's just like let's throw the book at them, and this momentum, and they found everything. They looked up they sort of chucked, they got the brand, they put the company name into Google, found the company, found the search up Namibia, found the tour, found the itinerary, and they called every single person that we were staying at subsequently to tell them of our faults, and
we'll own up to that. Right, which led to us having to ride to the nearest police station, spending hours at a police station, sat on the floor outside while they processed us, not knowing what was going to happen. There was a mention of jail time and a court date in November, which meant potentially we would have had to go to jail for 2 months.
We did the wrong thing, and that was my responsibility. We rode through an area where we didn't have a permit, and I was willing to take that risk that, we won't get caught. And, that was my job, or that was my fault. And, we went to a place that was really cool to go ride and to experience riding in the sand, and it was like such an amazing day for everyone to enjoy that. But we weren't supposed to be there. And it was a protected area of land, and I got in trouble for it. We all paid the price, and it was just a good reminder for me that I fucking hate getting in trouble, and I genuinely always do the right thing, or kind of, overall do the right thing. And by us kind of breaking the rules and other guys getting in trouble, it was such a shit feeling. And it's one that I don't miss.
We had to go to the police station and deal with the sand riding, and we were very late getting into Greenfire Lodge, which was the home of our day off the next day. And we ended up, the approach road into Greenfire Lodge, when we thought we were all there in the dark, had huge sand drifts on it, and quite a few of us just started down this road and immediately came off. I hit my shoulder really hard. Everyone found that afternoon quite challenging.
The one moment that just proper broke me was when we got into Greenfire Lodge and did the deep sand in the dark. It was falling off loads. I'd seen one of the guys knock himself out in front of me, and that was after seeing Tom come off his bike a couple of days before. And I just thought, this is too dangerous, this is too hard. I'm not good enough, I'm not a good enough rider. This isn't enjoyable.
It was like, okay, this is going to be a bit tough. But actually, I didn't feel that bothered by it because ignorance is bliss and that. I couldn't see the track very well. So I thought I'd probably be okay. And yeah, I wasn't. I basically dug the front end into the sand, went over the front and knocked myself out. And which was not like horrendous. I wasn't out cold for long. I think it was probably only a few seconds, but I just remember, I think it was seeing Rowan's face.
And while some people were struggling, like that ride to Greenfire, like it was tough. Like I could see how tired some of the boys were, but in all honesty, like I was having the time of my life, like going back and forth and just thinking, whilst this was happening, I was just looking around at the surroundings, and it was dark at this point, or the sun had dropped behind, over the horizon behind the mountains, and it was like backlit then, these mountains were, and it was just like this multicoloured backlit sky, darkness sort of around us, and it was just stunning. And I'm like thinking, like, I'm in the middle of Namibia, you know, like this is insane. Yeah, so I enjoyed doing that. It was never a problem.
The next day, I think I spent the whole day dwelling on, because we weren't on the bikes, I spent the whole day dwelling on Tom's accident and my own sore shoulder from falling off on the way into Greenfire. And I think, had we been back on the bikes that day, I possibly would have been in a better mental state, but dwelling on all of that, I hadn't given up at that point. And I was determined to get back on the bike. And I got out of Greenfire okay. I'm at the back when we leave Greenfire, bar support vehicle, Werner. And I'm just riding on this gravel that's got big sand drifts across it, and I can't get the confidence to get up to speed. And I just start questioning myself, questioning what I'm doing. Why am I taking these risks? Do I want to end up like Tom? You know, not that Tom's accident was his fault. Just why am I doing this? Life's more important to me than this. And I couldn't get the confidence. My head had gone, and it was getting worse and worse. And we had about, I think, 20 or 30 kilometers to like a lunch stop. And I was the last one there. I was probably 10, 15 minutes behind everyone else because I was traveling less than 50 kilometers an hour and they were doing 80 to 100 kilometers an hour on gravel. And so we sat down, we filled up the bikes at the garage, sat down for a spot of lunch, and my head has just gone and I'm dwelling on it. And I sort of murmured a few things to the people I was sitting around. I think I was sitting around Sam and Salts. And I plucked up the courage to go and talk to Joe and say, I think I need to sit the rest of the day out. Fully respected where I was. Yeah, and we loaded my bike onto the trailer and I jumped in with Werner.
Then the one I also remember quite well is just before I burnt my clutch out. We all got through the sand eventually, and then there was a massive like ice cold swimming pool, and we all just jumped, just boxers and all, just jumped in and sat there, and that was lovely. And then stayed in there, played frisbee. That was pretty special. So.
It felt like a lot of the trip was building up to this one day. The instant of riding on the dunes was purely to have practice of riding on sand, and that was to get us into the best position possible to be able to complete this one section. Joe had done it the week before. It was a part of the road that they were redoing, and it was, a tough sand section, but it's one that I have some of my best memories of. I think all of the preparation and all the practice leading up to that part allowed me to actually enjoy it.
Yeah. That's the fucking most mental thing. It was like borderline fun.
Yeah.
Once I settled into it, I was like, oh, I can change the direction, I can see like a divot and I can just give it through.
When you said that, it was actually funny as fuck, because you were like, this is borderline fun. At that moment, I was going through some really sketchy shit, and I was like, this is not fucking.
Oh, I hope the boys don't get off too many times.
Yeah. So my favorite place is a secret location in Namibia. It's our campsite in the south of Namibia, near the border. It was a location that was shared with me by a friend, and he said, look, I'd love to share this location with you, but please don't share it with anyone else, or don't publicly share the location of it. And he, the fact that he trusted me with that location to take other people to, it's been something that I've held close, and it's an amazing location that other people have really enjoyed, and it really becomes like one of the highlights of our Namibia trip.
One of the most incredible moments really was the road into the riverbed on that last night of camping, which was just, wow. It was insane. You know what I mean? The road was so much fun, because I think after all the tough roads we'd had, that was just dusty. It was dusty and it was like fun. Everybody seemed to just be enjoying themselves on that little leg, you know what I mean? It was, getting the back wheels spinning and being confident and just knowing that we were reaching, the end of the trip.
We'd ridden ahead and we'd kind of got there, and it was this dried up riverbed, middle of nowhere, like really out in the wilderness. And I think somebody put on, with Pink Floyd, right? And everyone's kind of lying on the sand, staring up. It's gone dark by this point. Looking at the stars, just proper taking in this amazing place. And then 20 minutes later, Werner turns up in the truck, blasting NWA, with lights firing off everywhere. Werner's out dancing and all of that, we're in the middle of a riverbed in Namibia, blasting Fuck the Police from NWA. It was amazing. That campsite was really quite special.
On the journey to that dry riverbed, sitting in the truck with Werner, just for a laugh, I put my daughter's party playlist on, which was a lot of hip hop. Joel knew all the words to all the songs, and me and Werner were just like getting into it, and we were just having stereo cranked up, an amazing time. And we come up with this plan. We'd stopped at the town before to buy some provisions for campfire cookery that night. So we come up with this plan. We were looking for a song that we could roll into camp with, because we knew it would be dark. We'd roll into camp, we'd flash the spotlights, we'd have the music blaring, the windows down, arms out the windows. We settled on NWA's Fuck the Police. Why? I don't know. Maybe it was because of our interactions with the police a couple of days earlier, and we rolled into camp with, and it just had just the most perfect effect, because everyone was exhausted, sitting around, waiting for us to turn up. They had nothing. They were just sitting on the dirt, waiting for us to turn up with all their bags and stuff, and we pumped this music out, and everyone's up, we're all dancing, and it was just a really cool moment, yeah. That whole camping in that environment there was just something special about that night, yeah.
Woke up cold one Tuesday.
The morning after, Toby decided to wake everyone up on his bike, riding around, this riverbeds, / campsite with his mankini on, in which he said afterwards was a poor idea. He thought it would be a good idea until he realised he's pretty much riding with no protection. Boots, nah, he wouldn't have gone gloves. Boots and helmet, mankini. And I think he was like, looking back on it, it probably wasn't his best idea, but at the time, in terms of just picking up a mood towards the back end of the trip, it was hilarious.
I think for the rest of the group, like Toby's mankini was probably quite tough to deal with, but because I roomed with Toby pretty much most of the trip, it was nothing compared to his boots and the smell of his feet. So, you know, the mankini was actually quite easy to deal with.
Then I made my way to the kitchen, but I had to stop from the shock of what I found. A room full of all of my friends, all dancing round and round. And I thought, hello, new shoes, bye-bye blues.
The biggest one for me that stands out in terms of it being completely unexpected was the point that we got to the end of our sort of Namibia part of the trip. What was supposed to be quite a straightforward day, going through the border and then getting to Springbok, turned out to be 22 hours stuck at the border. Wasn't necessarily expecting such a big difference in the Namibia to South Africa kind of relationship. I wouldn't say it was necessarily funny, but as a group that had spent, I guess, 7 or 8 days together and with some really strong friendships and some definitely some big characters, actually it turned out to be quite enjoyable at times.
You know, at the border, we thought we would be there for 2 hours, and it ended up being 24 hours. Even the locals around there sort of welcomed us in at late notice.
The trip was put together so well. It just seemed so easy, you know what I mean? Joe obviously had a schedule that he had to keep to all the time, like loosely, and he probably felt pressure from that. I think we probably saw that when we were trying to cross the border. He probably felt the pressure, and that was quite a big moment, really, to see how much Joe actually cares about the trips going well and about everybody's well-being.
But as it was, it took us 24 hours. So, like, the bureaucratic side of it was a bit of a nightmare and a headache and really frustrating. But again, when you brought it down to like an individual level, the people who we dealt with through that time were awesome. I mean, we're stuck there 24 hours at the border, and next thing you know, we're sat with the police officer watching a Rugby World Cup game on his phone.
I guess freedom means different things to different people, doesn't it? I think, because I spent a couple of days off the bike, my first day back on the bike was after quite a challenging morning, after a challenging night at customs, and my first day on the bike was leaving South African border towards Lambert's Bay, I think. It was quite early on that trip, and it was a beautiful winding road, and Joe was up front taking photos of us. I don't know, there's just something about that, being back on the bike after a couple of days off, nice tarmac road, that just gave me a feeling I probably didn't have for any other time on the trip. Yeah, I think freedom. So to me, that was a feeling of freedom. I'd been in the truck with Werner, with Joel, with Phil for a couple of days, and that was my first taste of helmet on freedom again.
The one place I was really looking forward to was Cape Town, not just because it was at the end of the trip where we'd finish and where we knew there was going to be good beer, but because of Chapman's Peak and some of the coastal roads. Years back now, it was the first place where I actually rode a full-size motorbike. It was a Triumph Bonaville. So I just got memories of, well, being again outside my comfort zone, because it's the first time I jumped on a big bike, but also it led to me just, absolutely loving life on two wheels, and kick-started my slight obsession with motorbiking. So place I really want to go back to for that, and actually as a bit more of a confident rider. And I also wanted to share it with Sam and the guys, just to show them this particular road and area that inspired me to jump on the bike. So
I think riding, because I've always loved Chapman's Peak in Cape Town, but doing that on a motorbike, seeing what's around you was beautiful, and the weather was perfect for us.
Okay, Charlie. Even though you fucking cut me out, you cunt.
First of all, there was a bit of history between everyone there. Like, we all knew Ollie. That was the one thing that bonded us all together. We all knew Ollie. We all had a story of him. And it was always a laugh, the story. To have that on the basis, that is the starting point, sort of made sure, like it was this really positive, exciting, fun start. There wasn't any of this aggroness or alpha male. And in fact, it was actually, Joe did a great job of fostering this, because at the beginning, he said, this is going to be, not a tour, this is an adventure. But he said, I've got one rule, and it's don't be a dick. So a rule so simple actually contributed not only to the decisions people were making, but also just, to feel like the environment. I don't think anyone was a dick. Like, yes, people got, short-tempered or like were tired. I mean, that's all part of it. But there was never a time where I felt like someone was just being a dick.
I think Werner was probably my closest bond, because we had, I shared with Rowan on the first night. I think my snoring got too much. So then somehow I ended up I was on my own the second night because Rowan slept under the stars. The third night, somehow it got moved to Harry, poor Harry. And I think he lasted a couple of nights. And then I ended up with a room on my own at Greenfire for 2 nights, which was amazing. And then I shared with Charlie. So I never really had that, Salts and Sam shared all the way through.
Well, like I said, we've lived together for years. Like, it wasn't an uncomfortable thing to do for us. We're pretty used to it, so yeah. Unfortunately, if he's had a few beers, he does snore, so that's one thing I'd change. Yeah.
Does he know he snores?
Yeah, he's got a massive nose, doesn't he? He doesn't ever want a side profile.
When I look back on the trip, the moments I look most fondly of are times where we were just having a great time, we were smiling, something that ever happened. It often involved Toby. When I look back at times that actually my cheeks were hurting from laughing so much, it involved Toby. One of my favorite evenings was him just telling stories around the fire. And he just kept saying, okay, one more. But truth be told, we all just wanted to hear him tell all his stories. And then Charlie hit us with one story. And he only needed to say one story, and it trumped all of Toby's.
It's not one of those guys that I would drop if someone gave me a ring and said, I'm in trouble, I need help, I've broken down, whatever it may be. I go, I'll be there now, yeah, no problem. Or I'm feeling really shitty, I need a coffee, can you come and meet me? Be like, yeah, I'm there now. There's not one person that I wouldn't do that with.
The way the group worked together and the way the group bonded together, and the roles we all took within the group without just naturally, that was a huge part of the experience for me, and that was one of the things I take most from that trip. I went for the adventure and the landscape, and probably that's the thing I guess I took away the most.
I felt like we were like a bunch of brothers, just with each other, various ages, and do you know what? That didn't matter at the end of the day. No one cared about your skill. We were there. If someone fell over, we'd be there to pick them up. If someone had a bad day, someone was there. I felt like we bonded like a family more than anything by the end of the trip, and I was sad to say goodbye, to be honest, because we became so close.
Seeing, well, both myself, but seeing other boys literally change in front of your eyes in terms of the way they are and their acting was, yeah, something that still sticks with me at the moment. Speaking to Toby after, and his wife saying to him that it's like seeing him 20 years ago is for someone to actually see that, yeah, it's incredible. Dino Dave, he said it to me, like often he's only ever seen me in this environment, especially through the summer. Like in hospitality, it can be tiring and stressful, and naturally I get caught up in that, and I think he came up to me and said that he's never seen me like I was there. So yeah, I'm trying hard not to slip back into those bad habits, and he does call me out sometimes when he comes. He's like, "Are you slipping back?"
The group just gelled from day one. I genuinely felt like I could have sat down and had a difficult conversation with pretty much anybody. Well, yeah, with anybody there, you know, and I didn't feel like anybody would judge you, you know, and everybody would be open into listening to each other, you know. I think I said it before, like I actually felt quite reserved from my normal self, but I really enjoyed observing the way that the group was, which is something that I probably haven't done a lot of in the past, because I've been the knobhead in the centre, and I definitely wasn't like that. I was the knobhead still probably, but not necessarily in the centre, and it was like, it was really nice to see that and to appreciate it. So yeah, definitely the camaraderie in that group was incredible, yeah. No situation was too tough, was it?
Since I've got back, I have said yes to everything, whereas before I would say no. You know, no, I'll stay at home, I'll kind of stay in a safe environment. You know, I'd go mountain biking, motorbiking, etc. But the real thing that would take me out of my comfort zone, no. Since then, I've said yes, and we've only been back a few months, and I've probably had more experiences in the last 2 or 3 months since coming back than I have in the last 10 or so years, other than family life.
It's helped us realise what's possible. Like these things, they are achievable, even for normal people like us. You know, we don't have any particular special skill set of riding a motorbike off-road, and we managed it.
Like, get out there, get out of your comfort zone, you know, get away from your office, go on that trip, put yourself in uncomfortable situations, and really go on that adventure that you may want to do, but you actually need to do it. They didn't know how bad they needed this trip. And I think they came back home with a brand new look or outlook on life that I think really ignited their soul and that fire, and you know, it like kind of brought them back to being a kid and like just following that joy and that passion of what makes them happy, you know, not what someone like, you know, following someone else's goal or just working some 9 to 5 just because it's a good paycheck. Like sometimes you gotta make some fucking tough choices and realize like, you know what, I'm actually not happy. And I need to figure out what I need to do to be happy. And it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's pretty fucking rewarding when you can follow your passion and, you know, go out there and travel and go explore new places.
Those will be the best memories. I just wanna
therapy for me.
One of the stories was when I went to Longleat when I was younger with a friend, and we went through the enclosure and no rhinos were hurt on this. In fact, he didn't even know it had happened. But I bet my mate that I could get out of the car and slap the rhino on the bum. I jumped out of the car, it was only about 50 metres, but I ran to the back of the rhino, give it a good old hearty slap on the bum. I swear he didn't even feel it, and then ran back in the car, and it was pretty uneventful, nothing really happened.
Yeah, I think it's been misreading of the situation, really. Yeah, I think Toby thought there was something going on, but no, it's not like that.
So he'll get a little bit embarrassed, I think, about this, because he hasn't opened up to his emotions, but Rowan and I had a little bit of a holiday romance, and we struck up a holiday romance. You know, we couldn't fight it. It was just something that happened, and he needs to succumb to that. Anyway,
it's a joint venture, Toby and Rowan, in partnership, more ways than one. Initially, what it probably will be is an incarnation of Toby's Slap a Rhino.
When it comes to Rhino Land, I'm a little bit restricted to what I can say because I've signed an NDA.
I think it's going to be like Alton Towers crossed with the Donkey Sanctuary.
Rowan has got a nice little small holding, and we saw an opportunity. I mean, we're entrepreneurs at the end of the day. You know, we can't not take on an opportunity.
This is actually, you know, something that could genuinely make money. If they're going to pull it off, or if someone's going to pull off something as ludicrous as this, they're the ones to do it.
It'll be a flop. Those two couldn't put it together if they tried.
Dave, come on.
Maybe what I'm a little concerned about is the emotional impact on the rhino. So I'm sure they have the animal's welfare at heart.
He's agreed to a 70-30 split as well, so 70 my end, 30 his end. So.
Oh, he saw it that way? Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, happily. Yeah, I'd happily remortgage for an investment like this one. It's a clear winner, right? Everyone's, who wouldn't want to slap a rhino?
In terms of investors, I would invest. I wouldn't invest. I would invest if I was you. So for that matter, can we cut?
Good closer. Yeah, thanks, Tom.